Welcome back, everyone, to Platonic Gaming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are both welcome, of course. As always, I am joined on this couch with Ben and Kyle. And
Hello.
we will be playing Metroid Dread once again, picking up from where we left off last time. And where we left off last time, we were talking about the concept of love. What is love?
Why do we need to feel love, though? Why do we like to feel love? Because apparently we have this feeling all the time. What are you feeling if you're not feeling love?
I think that's a question
all these other things, yeah?
for another time, I think. Love is a very complex subject.
Yes, it is. We'll be talking about Nietzsche as well.
It's true. We'll be talking about Plato. We'll be talking about the symposium.
Dichotomies?
No, diatima.
Diatima. Close. I cannot get that name right for the life
It's
of
okay.
me.
There's a lot of letters in there.
There sure is.
You might not be a real person.
Who knows? Anyway, so what is love, you guys?
It is. I mean, this is kind of where you have to break it down. There's different types of love, right? You love your friend, you love your exclusive partner, or whatever you call it.
Your significant other?
Your significant other.
I like exclusive.
Exclusive partner. My exclusive
Actually,
partner.
for some
I mean, it
people,
makes sense.
Some people it's not.
exclusive.
It's not very exclusive.
Yeah. Which we may touch on. You love your mother, you know, and it's all a little bit
pizza,
different.
hopefully.
Yeah, you love pizza. Or
Some people don't. But
people
everyone
are wrong.
should love chocolate, and if they say they don't, they're wrong, and they just want to be a hipster.
I mean, it's alright.
But the point is, all of those are describing very different feelings.
Exactly. You don't love chocolate the same way you love your mom, hopefully.
In a book that I guess Plato or Socrates wrote.
It was a play.
Plato.
Yeah, so...
And I don't remember...
Symposium.
Yeah, Plato's Symposium.
Plato Symposium.
Diatima.
Dichotomy.
Dichotomy.
She brings up pretty much what the most famous account of love is, philosophically speaking, which is, you know, the ladder, or
Yes,
how there is different levels of love, right? And this is where the phrase platonic love comes from. Although, spoilers, it might not be what you think it is.
That is essentially
Ben,
true.
tell us a little bit about the levels of love.
Okay, so what Diatima
Yes.
Okay.
says in the Symposium is basically the first level of love, kind of that first rung on the ladder, if you're thinking of it that way, is bodily love, which is pretty obvious what that means. It means you love someone for their body. Just
Everyone
like
loves me.
Mater in college.
Sometimes this kind of love is known as lust.
Yeah. I do not love
although that has definitely got a much more negative connotation to it. Whereas Diatima kind of brings up how it's not actually a negative thing to love someone for their body. It's just not really... it's nothing compared to the other forms of love.
the higher forms.
Exactly. And so, as you might have guessed, the second form of love would be loving someone for their personality.
Right.
Yeah, Kyle, do you want to hit on that a little?
I mean, just it's fairly self-explanatory. Loving someone for their personality, just as they are as a person, maybe the way they interact with the world and stuff. You know, that guy, my coworker, so to speak, is just a really friendly, nice guy. You know, I can love him for that, I guess, right? Or maybe he plays Metroid Dread. Maybe I love him for that.
I love him for that.
Exactly. But it doesn't quite touch on these next few levels, which are, what's the next one?
After love of personality.
Society or humanity?
Yeah, so kind of what he goes into there is he talks about how once you love someone for their body, you start to figure out that, well, there's plenty of people who have those same traits, right? And so you can find someone who's your type, and your type might be, I don't know, someone who is tall, or someone with brown hair, or someone who knows where the heck they're supposed to go,
Yeah, sorry, Dallin, not loving you for that right now. You're not my type currently.
Not in that respect. And so, one of the points that Diotima makes is that you realize that there are a ton of people that have those characteristics when you're talking about love of body. And that is one of the things that kind of encourages you to move toward this higher form of the love of personality or the soul of the person, right?
Right.
But then, even that, when you're thinking about these personality traits, those things aren't unique to that person either. If you love someone who likes Metroid Dread, and who has interesting conversations with you and stuff, there are probably thousands of other people in the world that would fit those same qualities, right?
Yeah, right.
And so what you begin to love after that is the society and the circumstances that formed that person and turned their personality into what it is.
Right. More like we've talked about how the sum of its parts is more than...
a person is more than the sum of their parts.
Right, exactly. A person is more than the sum of their parts, and so we get to this place where we're starting to love all of their parts, right? Or love them besides some of their parts that we may not like, essentially. I don't know, say you have an addict or someone you love.
Yeah, you start to love them in spite of their failings.
Right. And then what was next? It was...
So after that, you start to... it's the love of truth.
The love of truth, yes.
So the love of truth is just like another one of those higher forms of love. And a lot of people, don't exactly understand what that means. I don't fully comprehend what that means. It basically, the way I understand it, is you just start to love the way things are. You love things as they are.
Right, it's kind of...
I think that's more of the love of beauty. I would say the love of truth is you basically love something only if it is true, to a sense, right?
Well, okay, so
Maybe.
here's how I'm kind of seeing it. If you think about the way that you have this natural progress along the ladder, each time you realize that it is not something unique to that person, the traits that you love.
Yeah, love isn't just something that you have.
It's not just something that you have between you and one other person.
Yeah,
right.
It is something that kind of... For example, if you talk about the love of kind of humanity or culture or however you want to put it, of humankind, you're loving kind of like the humanness that is in all of us, and how part of what you love about a specific person is the humanity that you can see in them. And then if you take that a step further to the love of truth in general, it's that same truth, that same beauty that you can find in humanity, you can find in nature, in the laws of nature, in physics even, in whatever it is, anything that is true, you can find that same beauty, and you can find that same love in things that aren't even just people.
Yeah, but you're still essentially mixing the love of beauty.
I think that it is, doesn't... beauty and truth in Plato's ladder are kind of the same rung, right?
Yeah, they're...
Really? No,
so the love of beauty
above.
itself is right after the love of truth.
Right.
And so they follow... They like...
Yeah.
It follows... Yeah,
so they follow each other.
Yeah, one implies the other, basically.
Right. They're definitely deeply connected, and if you ask me, when we get to the love of beauty, it's kind of a mix of the love of truth and the love of humanity, or like what creates what it does. And it's more of looking at life as a whole and loving exactly what it is for the artistic, for essentially, say, for the artist who made it, whether you call that just an abstract, the universe, whether you call that the laws of physics, whatever, you look at it as you would a piece of art. You look at life and the world around you as you do this beautiful painting, so to speak, right?
Exactly. And so the religious among you might call it the love of God, right? Love the way that God loves, which is this perfect love. And that's kind of what the term platonic or platonic love comes from. It's not just this like I don't know, the way society kind of has it defined these days is any love that's non-sexual, so like love between friends or between
love
traditionally two people who could be lovers but aren't.
But aren't lovers, just love each other as people, right?
Yeah.
And like, it's close, but it's definitely a little watered down than the original term used.
Right, the love of beauty as a whole, like as itself.
Right. But anyways, that kind of leads us into...
right, what did Nietzsche think about love?
What Nietzsche thought about love was, for example...
Well, so, I mean, you could start with...
selfishness to...
Yeah, you could just start with the kind of basic quote is that love is greed.
Yeah, so Nietzsche really likes to...
looks a lot like greed, at least.
Exactly.
And Nietzsche, as we've heard it at least, seems to think love is one of the greatest things, you know, you can experience as a human and stuff, but you gotta be looking at whether your love is made in greed or whether it's, you know, this love of beauty, this true higher form of love, essentially, right?
Well, that's not exactly what I understand from what Nietzsche was saying. My understanding of Nietzsche's point is that they are kind of the same feeling. Greed and love,
could be the same primal feeling.
Yeah, like that same primal feeling, the same desire, but kind of manifesting in different ways.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's but he's not necessarily saying that there's anything wrong with that. He's not trying to say that that means that love is not worthwhile.
Right.
Exactly. So, like, for instance, are night and day two different separate things, or are they two manifestations of the same thing?
Right.
Right? And it's kind of the same thing that Nietzsche's saying about love and greed, right? If you love someone, you might love them more than you love yourself. Right. But if you love, I don't know, if you love something that someone else has, and you really want it, then you're probably not going to call yourself greedy. You just say, oh, I love these things and I just have to have it, right?
Right.
And like Ben was saying, Nietzsche didn't exactly mean for that to be a negative, bad thing. It's just, you have to look at things differently.
Well, and it's so easy for things to turn into this greedy love. Like, he brings up the idea that basically you love this thing so much that only you can have it, essentially. Like, Stephen West uses the example of a car, right? And it's your car, you love it, and the next guy who comes and sees it and just so happens to love cars may want that exact car, but you wouldn't want him to have it, you know, just because he happens to love cars too. You want that car, which is why you have it, essentially. And it can look the same way sometimes with you know, different lovers, essentially, like monogamy versus
Again?
Wow, twice in a row. It's impressive. Anyways, monogamy versus like plural relationships, and plural relationships sometimes represent or can often see, or at least in my experience, some of those end up being a little bit more love of the body mixed with just regular friendship, right? But also it can be very selfish for you to assume that you're the best match for this person you love, and for them not to go and be able to question that without absolutely losing you, you know, because maybe if you truly love them, kind of, you would let them go, essentially, right? If there was a better match for them and maybe potentially a better match for you in that situation, right? And then you can get into the whole, in my opinion, you can get into the whole, like, codependency ideas where, you know, actually really just love that person for the fact that they make you forget how much you hate about yourself, which it can resemble very greedy, and it's not that you don't actually have one of these levels of love for them, it's just you don't love them in the same way you would love someone for their beauty, or for the highest rung on that ladder, the love of beauty, right?
So, an idea that is often expressed, and I'm not sure exactly what the origin is of this, but an idea that's often expressed nowadays is that love is a choice or an action, and not really a feeling. What do you guys think about that idea? How does that relate to Plato's idea of love, or Nietzsche's, or what makes it distinct from that concept?
I think it's relatively the same because
what does it mean? If what does it mean for love to be a choice? Because it's an idea that's kind of thrown around, but whenever we think of love, we think of a feeling. We think of the feeling of being in love, or the feeling of loving something.
Right, and so my opinion is that for the most part, here's where the choice comes in, is for the most part, it still is that feeling, but you get to choose and assess, I guess, whether you actually just love that person for the body, for the truth, or for the beauty, and then you get to choose whether or not to either try and progress that love, and or at least, do them a favor of not saying you love them more than the love for the body, because that could end up being very manipulative, right?
So what you're kind of describing right now sounds like choosing what sort of love to have for someone or for something. But my question is, what does it mean for love itself to be a choice?
To be an action?
To be an action.
That's a little bit different,
a verb, because it is a verb. To love something.
My understanding
is actually a verb.
To feel something is also a verb.
That is also a verb, yeah.
So my understanding of what it means for love to be a choice is, kind of like how I was saying, it is a bit of a mixture, but also on top of that, you can't expect for a relationship with someone to have those butterflies in your stomach every time you see them reaction the whole time. That's kind of like that infatuation that people often associate with love,
or like
especially for
the
like
puppy
a first love,
especially at the beginning of a relationship.
Exactly.
And then as you grow together, essentially that love actually moves up the ladder, essentially, in my opinion.
You have to learn to accept their flaws, and I think that's what because everyone has flaws. No matter how perfect you may think they are, everyone is inherently flawed and that's just the way humans are. And so learning to accept those things
That's kind of where it becomes a choice?
Yeah, because you choose to accept the good with the bad, right? And ideally, the good outweighs the bad.
Right.
At least, like, in the way you look at it.
Why is this one green?
They're all different colors.
I think there is a major point for loving someone even if the bad is worse than the good, right?
I can't go that way.
But I think in those situations, the love is very one-sided. You know what I mean? Or at least the action of it is very one-sided, and you can get up into all these psychosomatic or psychology definitions of how things work, right? And then you die.
And then you die.
You die. That is, in fact, how all things end.
Which brings us to our topic for next time.
Which is how do
the
all
concept
things end of death?
Of death.
Well, yeah. So death as a
philosophical concept, a psychological construct.
And this we may get into some metaphysical philosophy and whatnot.
Yeah, so death is more than just the end of life. At least that's the way a lot of people look at it, right?
And there are different definitions of death, in my opinion.
Oh crap! I escaped that guy.
And then you die.
And then you die.
Anyway,
Join us next time.
yeah, let us know what you think. What is love? Obviously, baby, don't hurt me. Of course.
Don't hurt
Also,
me no more.
We're no strangers to love, so
Eh,
you know the rules. So do I.
you guys might be no strangers to love.
I shouldn't be going this way.
This is
Anyway.
Well,
platonic
then stop
gaming after
going
all.
that way.
That's true. Join us next time for death and just, death.
Just death. Just
Maybe even the love of
a lot of
death.
death.
Who knows?
It's very thematic for this game, so it'll be good.
Yeah.
Or at least for Dallin's playing it is.
I dare you. I told you. You can play when we get to
You
Crane.
do better. You play and try to do better.